with this mic, actually.
Yeah.
Do I need to get closer with this mic?
I mean, it's
how, you know.
But if I start getting pat...
We all need a limiter. It's too loud.
So how did the two of you start?
I think we just started right now, actually. Okay. Yeah, I'll start now then. Okay. Hey, everyone. It's Ellie.
And Tara, and we're here at the 180 podcast.
Yes, we're here live in California.
Studio,
California. Live studio. I don't know what I was going to say there, but we are back. And
Yes.
just before we get started, I'm going to just read off some social media so you can follow us there. So you can check us out on 180 Shift in Instagram. Twitter and TikTok is 180.shift. Facebook, Tara, letter N, Ellie. YouTube, if you're not watching from there, is Shift 180. Website is 180shift.org. Check us out there. Learn who we're about. And yeah, give us a follow, please. We're doing really good. We're almost to 8,000, I believe, on Instagram. So we're pushing close.
Yeah, and
Almost there.
And thank you for everyone who follows us and engages with our content, and let us know if you would like to also be on the podcast, because we love our guests. Speaking of which, we have one with us today. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Rabbi Michael Barclay from Temple Ner Simcha in Westlake Village. I know what else you want to know about me.
Well,
Any history about yourself?
I'm a rabbi.
Yes.
we got that one.
I'm a columnist for PJ Media and for American Thinker. I am very, very blessed to do a lot of work. I'm a former professor at Loyola Marymount University in theology from years ago, but I'm very, very blessed to really fight for religious liberties. Our synagogue was the one synagogue in the state of California that never closed.
Wow.
We were open. We never closed for one time. We were the only ones who produced high holiday services in 2020. We were the only high holiday services.
Wow. Yeah.
My attitude about it is really pretty simple. When people said, "Why are you staying open?" and the reason was pretty simple. Jews didn't close our synagogues for the Inquisition or Adolf Hitler, and Gavin Newsom can kiss my tochas. We stayed open. We streamed for anyone who needed to, but we stayed open, for which we got a lot of grief and a lot of hate mail.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, did people accuse you of politicide or anything, or make it super
everything? So
political?
It became clear in February of 2020. A woman came to services, and she was in her 70s, and she came and we didn't know about the virus. And I said, Alicia, I'm really not comfortable with you being here. And she started crying. And she said, Rabbi, my mom died last week, and I promised her whole life I would go to temple the week she died. Please don't send me away. And in that moment, I knew we couldn't close. We have an obligation, a privilege, a blessing, that we needed to be there for people. A lot of hate mail. My house was vandalized 4 times, and M80 was thrown at my house.
Oh my goodness.
And so a lot of that. And
that's awful.
And
I mean, I don't even understand the point of that, really, because it's like, now you're violating someone else's rights because you feel violated. That's fire with fire, isn't it?
Yep, and that's one of the problems. And so I've, as I say, I'm a columnist for PJ Media. I do a lot on Twitter and a lot on PJ and on American Thinker and Jewish Journal, different places. A lot of it is political analysis through a religious perspective, a spiritual perspective.
Oh, I see, yeah.
There's a great saying from a rabbi 2,000 years ago, a man named Rabbi Hillel, and he said, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? If I'm only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when? So when I see something that's wrong, or an attack on religion, like recently when the Dodgers were honoring that anti-Catholic group.
Right, yeah.
I actually went.
We were there, we spoke
remember.
there, yeah.
So I was there.
That was so bizarre. And then they canceled, and then they didn't cancel, and it was like...
And people said, why is a rabbi speaking at a Catholic event? And the answer is because we're all on the same side. And an attack on the Catholic nuns, which is what that group is an attack on all of us. And so it's very important to me that we all stand with each other as people and brothers and sisters in faith.
Yes.
So,
And so we're very glad that you're on here because, as Christians, we do want to stand and be able to be in support of what's happening right now in Israel.
Thank you.
And that's why we've we brought you or asked you to come on, and we're very thankful that you've come on. But I know that you wanted to start off with getting through some of the back history.
Yeah, so I guess, in regards to everything in Israel, can you tell us just what's your perspective on that?
That's sort of like asking me, can you tell me the whole Bible in 30 seconds?
Well,
just for educational purposes, what's the history of
Okay, so
what's happening right now?
Let's go through the history. Okay, so let's go through the history. And let's be brutally honest, and people are going to get upset, but this is the honest reality.
You can't be afraid of that, you know?
I'm not. But Israel, I'll back up. There's an old joke story that the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations was about to give a speech. And before he did it, he said, I want to tell a story before I do. Moses, 3,700 years ago, was bathing in the River Jordan. And he got out of the river, and his clothes had been stolen by a Palestinian. And suddenly the Palestinian ambassador jumps up. He says, that's a blatant lie. We were not even in the area in that region at that time. And the Israeli said, great, now that we've established that, let me give my speech. There is no historical Palestine. It does not exist. It is not related to the Philistines. There is no historical Palestine.
Okay.
What happened is that with the British mandate, they had created Palestine. They actually were the ones who created that. And what people think of as Palestinians are actually Egyptians, Jordanians, and Syrians. Okay? So Israel becomes an independent state in 1948. All the countries attack. And by the way, there's a great, for people who want to really learn about this, there's a prince, I think his name was Banshore, but there's a prince of Saudi Arabia who was in charge of the Saudi Arabian Ministry of Defense for many years, who in 2020, 2021, somewhere in there, gave an interview about the history of the Palestinians. And he's brutal and honest because he got tired of hearing about the corruption and the lies.
Yeah.
So there is no historical Palestine. In 1967, Israel's attacked, and Israel expands and takes, and then comes back. And those refugees, the Syrian refugees from the north, and the from the east, the Jordanian refugees, and the Egyptian refugees in the south, they go to Gaza, and the Jordanians are in the West Bank, and they call themselves Palestinians.
Yeah.
That's at that point. They're not. They're Egyptians, Jordanians, Syrians.
And just to clarify, what year was that?
Right after 1967. It happens in the Six-Day War in June of 67.
Wow, that's pretty recent.
So they then say that, and they say, this is Palestine, and our definition of Palestine is from the river to the sea. And they end up, in the late 60s, early 70s, hiring the Arabs hire a public relations company out of New York, which then says, you need to have a victim, because the world is siding with little Israel. And at that point, you now have Palestinians as an organization, and they become the victims. There is no historical Palestine, and that's an important thing to recognize and understand. So that's the first piece. Right. And in 2005, and Israel's always about land for peace, the goal in Judaism of war is not victory. The goal is peace. So if we have to give up land for peace, happy to do it.
I see.
Okay? So you have Gaza in 2005, and in 2007, Hamas takes over Gaza. And this is not the Palestinian people. This is the leadership of the Palestinians. And there's a difference. The people are good people. Like anyone, they want peace and prosperity.
The citizens, right?
The citizens just want what you want.
Yeah.
They want their kids to go to school and meet nice boys and nice girls. But the leadership doesn't, and the leadership has always been very corrupt. That's what the Prince of Saudi Arabia was talking about so specifically.
So I heard that it is like similar to ISIS. Is Hamas ISIS?
No, it's not ISIS. It's a different group, but it is again Arab terrorists, and many of the leaders actually live in Qatar. They actually don't even live with the people, and so what's been going on is not the people; it's the leadership, and. So that gives a brief history. Yeah. We come to today. I'm going to apologize for losing it. Okay, I'm sorry. We come to today, and we come to this past few days. And Hamas made a very clear and definite statement. They came out, and it's sponsored by Iran. Money's coming from Iran. And they came out with an intention, which they were able to succeed in doing, of killing and kidnapping and torturing Israeli citizens, civilians, not soldiers, civilians. And this was their intention. They didn't say, are you Jewish, are you Muslim, are you Catholic, are you Christian? You're an Israeli. And they killed them, and they beheaded babies, and they parachuted into a dance party, and they killed people, and they raped women, and then killed them, and then raped their girlfriends next to the dead corpses. And there are videos that you can see on Twitter. I mean, look, thank God for Elon Musk, because a year ago these kind of videos would have been prohibited, so people can see the horrors that are going on. And they have lost any sense of humanity by choice. So you ask, where are we today? So I try to base how I live based upon the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. And Maimonides, a great teacher 1,000 years ago, said there's no words of hate or anger in the Bible. If you see that, it's you. And it's true, especially when you're studying it in the actual Hebrew. As an example, it doesn't say God gets angry. It says God's nostrils flare, which is passionate, not anger. Okay. But there's this line that's repeated in 2 different ways in the Torah. And the line is that we should always be at war with Amalek, and that Amalek should be blotted off the face of the earth. So that doesn't make sense. Amalek died 3,700 years ago. It should say the children of Amalek, but it doesn't. So the rabbis discuss, what does that really mean? And what they talk about is that Amalek was the one who attacked the ancient Hebrews from behind, where the children, the women, the weak, the old, the infirm are. And they attacked there, and we are obligated to destroy that kind of perpetrator. They talk about the Amalek within, that we all have an inner Amalek, the one who perpetrates, who hurts us. Think of it like an addiction. The addiction is Amalek. And you don't negotiate with an addiction. You don't have one drink as an alcoholic, right?
Yeah.
You cut it out. In the same way, those few occasions where a human being and all souls are born in beauty and are God's gifts. But when a human being chooses to become Amalek, to attack women and children, we are commanded to destroy them. Golda Meir had a great comment that's sad and true. She said, we can forgive the Arabs for killing us. We can never forgive them for making us kill them. Gaza needs to be the Hamas needs to be destroyed and have their ashes salt the earth. And the reason that I'm crying is because it's so sad to me. There is no joy in this at all. And it has to be done. They made a choice to go after the weak, the infirm, women, children. They made that choice. And we need to destroy that. And at the same time, we need to remember a midrash, a teaching that's a couple thousand years old, that it said that when God drowned the soldiers of Pharaoh in the Sea of Reeds, remember Moses parts the sea, that the angels started to rejoice, and God cries and tells them to stop. The work of my hands is being destroyed, and you want to sing songs. I'm not scared of Gaza. I'm not. I have faith in our I have faith in God, most importantly, and I have faith in our people. And I shared with you a video of our soldiers dancing and singing about their faith. But I have, over the last few days, had to remind countless people who have said, I can't wait till we quash and squash Gaza. The moment we have vengeance in our heart, the moment we have hate in our heart, we lost the war because we have become them. And we can't let that happen. We have to do what we need to do. We need to get in there and destroy every aspect and every cell of Hamas. But we cannot take joy in it. And we need to say prayers for their souls afterwards. We need to not for them, but for us.
Yeah.
So we retain our humanity. You know, Israel, the Israeli Air Force, what other Air Force does this in the world? Before they bomb a building, they give notification, we're going to bomb the building, get out if you're a civilian.
Yeah.
Who ever heard of doing that? But it's so that we do not lose our humanity. We don't lose what's important. And, you know, my face is all puffy, as I said to you, because I've been doing a lot of crying and a lot of praying and a lot of writing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And speaking. It is so important to understand we need to do what we need to do. We need to destroy Hamas, no question. And we need to really be clear to not rejoice in it, but to mourn it.
Yeah, that's a very important message.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would, absolutely.
So I hope that gives you a little bit of history from where we were and where we are.
Yeah,
that definitely does.
Super informative and helpful. I mean, yeah.
It could be, I think, it could be a very confusing thing sometimes, especially from what we're told. And you see it's pretty split, I think, from people who, I don't understand why it's split, of why people are still backing Palestine. But I know people personally who do support Palestine. And I just want to get your opinion on why do you think those people would still support them after all this?
I think there's a lot of reasons. First of all, it's to understand, oh, look, you brought coffee.
I was like, who is that?
Wow. Wow.
We try to treat our guests nicely.
This is proof there is a God. Except I can't reach to it. So there is...
well, I think that's a very good question. I mean, it's interesting. Like, why are people starting to form sides?
So let's back up to history a little bit. Okay, 2,000 years ago. 2,000 years ago, the early Christians are persecuted by the Jewish establishment. Okay, no question about it. They're actually the Christian Jews. They're called at that time, and they're persecuted. And the Gospels, and much of the Gospels, are written as a polemic against the persecution of these Jewish establishment, because the Jewish establishment did persecute the early Christians. In the 4th century, you have a translation of the Bible, of the Torah, called the Vulgate. And in it, there are mistranslations. First of all, there's a number of things. The Gospels aren't written by Mark, John, etc. They're written anywhere from 35 to 150 years later. They're actually not written by those men. And there's information in them that's not plausible. In other words, example, you guys learned and have learned that there was Passover, and then there was a trial, and they chose the thief as opposed to Jesus. When I try and stay out of Christian theology, I wish they might, some people would kind of stay out of our theology and studying Hebrew, but because I don't know Greek. So you have this trial. The trial could not have happened. It's an impossibility because it was during the holiday of Pesach, and you're not allowed to have public gatherings and trial that way. Okay, so it didn't happen. That doesn't mean that Caiaphas and these other guys who were clearly bad didn't persecute. But so there's this anti-Semitism that's in the early part of the text. And then in the 4th century, you have the Vulgate. And one of the things that happens is that the translator of the Vulgate consciously makes a decision that in Hebrew, there's the consonants of the Hebrew word, but the vowels are underneath. And in the Torah, there's no vowels. So my name of Michael could be pronounced Michaela, or it could be Amikilu. Okay, you get into the words. And there's a word karan, which means that the light shone out from his head, and a very similar word, karen, which means horn. And in the Vulgate, in the 4th century, it's translated as horn, not as light. That Moses comes down from the mountain, and what the text says is that a light shone from his face, from his forehead.
Yeah.
The Vulgate then says instead, no, they translate it as there's a horn.
I see. So
Okay.
there's a,
So now we have a myth that Jews have horns. Now, in 1144, in Norwich, England, there's a Catholic child goes missing,
Yeah.
and the local priest says that's because Jews need the blood of a Christian child to make their matzah for Passover. Okay, which, by the way, we can't even have meat that has blood in it. I can't.
And who said that?
This is in 1144 in Norwich, England. The local priest says that. So now,
Weird.
now you've got where in the and by the way, the Vulgate was the official Bible of the Catholic Church until the 1970s. It said that Moses had horns. Okay, so I know people that went into the military service, as often would happen, where someone said, "Okay, we're friends now, and you're a Jew. Show me your horns." We don't have horns. That's a yarmulke. We don't have horns. It's
That's
gray hair.
so bizarre. I have never heard that.
All right, so in 1144,
That's a good thing, I guess.
in 1144, it becomes we also drink blood. So now the myth is that Jews have horns and drink blood. So who are we associated with? And killed God, by the way. Okay? So who the Jews become associated with? The devil. So anti-Semitism has been built. It's a virus that mutates, and it's been built for 2,000 years. Now we get to the Holocaust. And so it's ingrained in people, this anti-Semitism. Now we get to the Holocaust. Well, it's not cool after learning that 6 million Jews died in the concentration camps and in these death camps that were costly to the Germans, to the Nazis. It's not cool to say, oh, we hate Jews. So anti-Semitism is hidden. It becomes very covert because people don't want to admit how they feel or how they were raised. By the time you get into the 70s, again, through the PR of the Arab world, specifically the Palestinian world, anti-Semitism becomes, well, I can't say I hate Jews, so I instead can say I hate Israel. So anti-Semitism becomes, it morphs into anti-Israel. By the time you get into the early 2000s, you then have people starting to say not just anti-Israel, because the Holocaust is 50, 60 years ago. They start to be anti-Jewish. You have people like Ilhan Omar saying, it's all about the Benjamins. And you start having this anti-Semitic trope that goes on and on, these myths that are horrible and not true. And so part of that is the ingrained anti-Semitism can be manifest as anti-Israel. And how can you manifest anti-Israel? I'm pro-Palestinian. So that's one aspect that has gone on with this. It's a very successful PR campaign over the last 50 years that the Arabs have done to make Israel, which is, understand that the enemies of Israel are 600 times larger than Israel. Before the 1967 war, Moshe Dayan used to say he could light a cigarette on one border of Israel and get to the other border on the opposite side, and the cigarette would still be lit. That's how small it is. Okay, it's a really tiny, tiny, tiny little piece.
Yeah.
But the world can take all of its hate on religion and on Judaism and throw it onto anti-Israel. So a lot of that it comes from that part of the world, from that kind of attitude. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would say, why would anybody side, with I think the terrorist groups and what they're doing? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's just common sense to be against torturing and hurting innocent people,
But remember, if on a deep level you believe that a Jew is not a person, which is the anti-Semitic trope that's been going on for 2,000 years, then what's the big deal? That's what part of the issue of the concentration camps. It doesn't matter what medical experiments were done. It doesn't matter what kind of hate, because they're not really people anyway.
So we talked about that coming from Christians partly, but where else is that stemming from? Because I feel like that's not a Christian viewpoint,
Well, okay, so there are, back up into a different place. Starting in the 1970s, and this is true not just in Judaism, but in Christianity. And when I say Christianity, I don't mean Catholicism. I mean, Christianity, Calvary, that kind of thing. But starting in the 70s, you start having a tremendous amount of Jews converting out of Judaism. The concern is, a Jew, if he's keeping true to his tradition, can't eat certain foods, can't go to certain places, the Sabbath's a different day, etc. But we want to be like everybody else. And it's natural for us to want to assimilate.
Yeah.
So by the 1970s, you start getting Jews who convert out of Judaism, not to another religion, but to secular leftism. That becomes their religion. You start getting Jews.
What are some values of secular leftism?
There's some great values. There's some fabulous values if you think about it. The value of taking care of each other, the value of being part of a community, the value of wanting to take care of social action. Those are nice values.
Well, here's another question. What are the solutions of
Well, they become secular leftists. And they, like many converts, totally reject where they came from. And in that rejection, they actually become anti-Jewish Jews. I don't know if you look at people like Bernie Sanders or Larry David. These are men who are Jews in name only. They're anti-Israel, they're anti-Jew, etc. And so you have these people who are now committed to their new religion of secular leftism, and they refuse to look at the actual tradition they come from.
Yeah.
And like anyone who's a fanatic, they look at their secular leftist leaders who can do no wrong. Ocasio-Cortez, Sanders, they're great, right? We love them. They're socialists.
Not really. I don't like
No, but that becomes the attitude, as opposed to looking at them for what they are, which is horrific.
Yeah.
I mean, it's horrible. And so it's easier to side with that. Now, I don't know if you guys saw what came out today from BLM.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I saw that.
Tell us. What is it?
Oh.
It's disgusting.
Yeah, BLM sided with.
Go ahead.
They sided with Palestine. They are in support of Palestine. Am I correct?
It's more than that.
Yeah.
Wait, they're in support of what happened? Like what
Yeah.
events transpired?
Yes.
and
So let me
everything?
give you a little history on BLM. And you can look up articles I wrote on PJ Media 3 years ago. First of all, let's talk about George Floyd. You guys have probably never heard of a guy named Horst Wessel. Probably. They don't teach that in history classes. Horst Wessel was a Nazi in the early 30s. And bad guy. Felon, drug dealer, pimp. Bad guy. Okay? Really bad guy. And he hadn't been paying his rent, so his landlady called friends of her deceased husband who were communists and said, go collect my rent. And they beat up this man, Horst Wessel, and they beat him up, and he ends up dying in a hospital. Horrible story. Hitler and Himmler say, oh, this is great. Now we have a martyr for our Nazi cause. And we're going to have peaceful demonstrations. And those become the brown shirt riots. George Floyd is a direct duplicate of Horst Wessel, and BLM used him the exact same way the Nazis used Wessel. BLM in their manifesto, and again, you can look at the articles I've written on PJ Media. I have links in them. They're from 3 years ago. BLM in their manifesto call for the destruction of Israel. Okay, in their manifesto.
Wait, what's their reasoning behind that? Do they have like a?
Because
it's not
it's
the
part of
Christian.
it's part of colonialism.
Yeah.
It's part of colonialism.
That's right. I did read something about
Okay,
that.
so in their manifesto, they've said point blank they want Israel destroyed. They've said this. They've put it in their manifesto. And as I say, there are links on the articles at PJ Media. And no one should be surprised about their peaceful demonstrations that became exactly like the Nazi brown shirt riots and their desire to destroy Israel. Now, a lot of Jews supported BLM and still do. And when they're confronted, and a lot of rabbis, and including the ADL, which is run by a guy named Jonathan Greenblatt, who is just, let's just say,
Piece of work.
yeah. We'll leave it at that. And again, I've written plenty of articles about him too. He used to work for the Obama administration. And on the, and the ADL has actually said that they support, the ADL broke off from their original founding organization of B'nai B'rith in 2009, and they've actually said they support BLM. And when confronted, but the BLM manifesto says they want Israel destroyed, oh, they don't really mean it. Well, the hell they don't. Of course they really mean it. So what came out today were a couple of memes from BLM Los Angeles and BLM Chicago. I don't know if there were other BLMs that picked it up as well. One was an image of a Hamas parachuter coming down, and these are the ones who parachuted into the dance party and kill 250 people who were there just celebrating music in Israel. They tweeted a meme of that in support, and then they tweeted a statement, which I'm sure you can pull up. It's on my Twitter feed, I know, which is Rabbi_Barclay, okay, Rabbi and Barclay, and they tweeted a statement of we are in support of the Palestinian people against colonialism, and they are doing the right thing, all in support of Hamas.
Yeah.
It wasn't just the Palestinian people. They're in support of Hamas, and they say it. And yet people are saying, well, BLM's a nice organization. No, they're not. They want me dead. I have said this. I would feel safer. I said this 3 years ago. I would feel safer walking into a Ku Klux Klan rally than I would a BLM rally. Because at least the KKK might hesitate before they try to kill me, figuring they might get caught. BLM has so much arrogance, they won't even think about that. And they have a right to have the arrogance. They don't get penalized. They don't get imprisoned. Right? Yeah. So, and you can probably, I'm sure you can pull it up. Their statement. I mean, I can pull it up very fast if you want me to.
You know, I did have one. You know what? Thing I wanted to say just really quickly. I'm just gonna
but following up with that, actually, very interestingly, so the top 10 Instagram followers, people who have the most followers on Instagram, so the top 10 people, like The Rock, Selena Gomez,
and
Beyonce, whatever, right? Well, they are, none of them have shown any, what's it called? None of them showed support for Israel. So the top 10 people on Instagram that have the most followers, and all of them are backed by BLM.
Isn't that interesting? And if you look, Joe,
look at this.
Joe Biden, I don't know if you saw the first tweet that came out from the White House and from Blinken, where it said, asking Israel to restrain themselves and not be violent. Then they deleted that tweet, but that was their first response to the hell that was going on.
Was that Biden?
President Biden and
Interesting.
Blinken.
I know that he's. Do you want to say?
Well, just really quickly. So this page was reposting BLM Los Angeles, and they said, "We too understand what it means to be surveilled, dehumanized, property seized, families separated, our people criminalized and slaughtered with impunity, locked up in droves. And when we resist, they call us terrorists. We too dream of a world where our people may live freely on decolonized land. May the borders, checkpoints, prisons, police, and watch lists that terrorize our communities crumble. And may the world be built from their ashes. Honor those who have fallen in the struggle." So what's your response to that?
They're scumbags. What do you want me to say? And that's being as polite and close to rabbinic language as I can use. I could say it in Arabic or Hebrew if you want. But they're. I mean, let's be clear. These are hate mongers. They want Israel destroyed. They want culture destroyed. And while they're at the same time, they're getting rich. Right? They're all. Think of all the millions of dollars that have been corrupted.
Has been the most mysterious thing, in my opinion, about BLM is where all that money went to, and then
six homes in Los Angeles is one of the places.
And it came out that one of the victims' mother, Breonna Taylor, was another one that a lot of people marched for. Came out that her mother said that she never even saw a dime from BLM. I mean, that was a statement that she provided, and she ended up getting attacked, so she took it down. But
so take a look,
right? The community didn't even see the money, but mansions were bought from.
So take a look, right? So someone who's just kind of just looking at the news briefly because they're young people in high school or college or starting their career, and they only see a few things. Oh, look, BLM is fighting because George Floyd was unjustly killed. Well, okay, agreed. But that has nothing. Let's not make him into a saint. This was a bad guy.
Yeah.
Okay, and we're going to side with BLM. And look, BLM sides with Palestine. We should side with Palestine. It's insane. And the fact that we're not calling it out at every opportunity is foolish and a mistake.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was just surprised to hear that there were people siding with the Palestinian terrorists. I was just surprised about that.
Kind of going back to so apparently what Biden said, I know that he came out in support of Israel, right? Now, I just wanted to know, is that statement that he came out with, I guess after he deleted the other one, is that have is that consistent with his actions as how his actions and his other words that he's been doing throughout his administration?
Biden and Obama were horrible, horrible presidents for Israel and for Jews. Period. End of report. BLM comes into play because of Obama. And he accepts it and he gives it credibility. Biden is just a puppet in that way. It's not hard to draw the dots and draw the lines. This attack has been planned for weeks, if not months. This didn't just happen, and apparently it was released in Israel yesterday or the day before that there was a cyber attack from Iran, which was one of the things that took down part of the defenses. And in the same way, we all just heard that, it was only a week and a half ago, 2 weeks or whatever, that Biden released $6 billion to Iran.
Yep.
But that's been in discussions for weeks, if not months. And Hamas just waited until they got the money before they attacked. But they've been planning at the same time because they knew that $6 billion was coming. And so Iran could give the money because they knew that $6 billion was coming. And Biden has been horrible for Israel, thank God. For whatever reasons right now, he is committed to Israel's defense, but we'll see if he actually walks his talk. I pray that he does. Israel, and this is something people don't think about, Israel needs America because Israel cannot afford a protracted war without America. So think about it for a second. When Israel goes to war, everybody goes to war.
Yeah.
Which means that industry, commerce, all shuts down.
Yeah.
If you have a protracted war, you have nothing to come home to, even when you win. And so in the Yom Kippur War, the story is, and I can't vouch for it, I was only 10. You guys, your parents might not even have been born then, that Golda Meir convinces Kissinger to convince Nixon that he better send support to Israel. And no, we're not going to do that. And Golda Meir says, if you don't, we will nuke. Because we can't afford a protracted war.
Yeah.
And so America says, no, we better get in there and give support. The support that America needs to give is for a couple of reasons. It's one, to keep Israel alive so they can have a protracted war and they don't have to go, scorched earth policy. That's number one. The other reason that America has to give huge support to Israel, and I learned this from Marco Rubio at a brunch, I never thought about it this way beforehand, is that all the world knows that Israel and America are tight allies and have been for 70 years. Okay? Which means that all of our allies, Japan, France, all of our allies around the world, look to see how is America treating Israel. And when America turns its back on Israel, every other ally is saying, well, it's only a matter of time before they turn their back on us, so we better find a new ally, Russia, China, whomever.
Yeah.
So the rest of the world is looking to see how do we treat Israel as to whether they want to still be our friends, whether they can trust us. So I pray that, in fact, Biden is going to deliver all that, or the people behind him are going to make sure he delivers all that. But I don't know, certainly his actions. Let's remember, Obama wouldn't even let Netanyahu come speak.
Yeah.
He was invited by Congress to speak anyhow. Biden treated Netanyahu like dirt when he came here. And we're very grateful that Biden is now stepping up. Hopefully his actions will echo the words of the last 24 hours.
I see, yeah.
Now, what I did hear is that there were some negotiations, I guess, being talked of before. So do you have any knowledge of that?
Between whom and whom?
Between Israel's government and Palestinian Liberation Organization, I believe.
The authority, but Israel has been extremely.
Yeah.
Our primary. We say, Oseh Shalom b'Marav, Hu Yaseh Shalom. May the one who ordains peace in the universe bring peace upon us, upon Israel, and upon all the world. We are about peace, always. And that's why Israel has always kept every land for peace deal. That's why there's no problems, thank God, with Egypt. They took over the Sinai, they gave 2/3 of it back. And Egypt said, you give it back and we're not going to attack. And they haven't, thank God. So, in the last 9 months, more aid, more food, more water, more everything has been given into Gaza than it has been for years. They've lightened it up. They've loosened up the ability of people coming in. The Palestinian people love going into Israel and working because, again, they want peace and prosperity.
Yeah.
Right? It's not that hard. The leadership doesn't. I don't know if it's still true. I know it used to be true. The best-selling beer for the Israeli Defense Force, and that says, even their name, it's not the Israeli Army, it's the Israeli Defense Force, only about defense. The best-selling beer was a Palestinian beer because the soldiers knew that, and I don't know if it still is, but it used to be, the soldiers knew if the Palestinians are making money and they've got a good economy, they're not going to want to be going and be homicide bombers. Yeah. It just makes sense. So it's we want people to be successful.
Yeah.
But the leadership wants of Hamas, Hezbollah, they want to keep the people in a bad place so that they're suffering, so that they want to go have jihad. Robert Spencer has written a tremendous amount of great work on this with Jihad Watch and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Now, Hezbollah, not a lot of people are talking about that. They talk a lot about Hamas, but what's with that group?
So Hezbollah is in the north and by Lebanon, and a similar type of organization. And so far, thank God, they have stayed quiet. And one of the reasons may be because at least 50,000 soldiers are already up there, and they're sending more. But Israel doesn't want to be having a multi-front war. That's not good for Israel in any way, shape, or form. Even one war is not good, let alone multi-fronts. Mm. So Hezbollah has so far, thank God, with the exception of a few rockets and a few, renegade soldiers from them, have really stayed out of the conflicts for now. Mm. And we pray they will continue to. But again, it's leadership of, if you can keep your people down as a leader, you get a lot of power, you get a lot of money, you're keeping it all for yourself, and that you keep them angry and upset, and you make an enemy to make them upset at.
Yeah.
Which in this case is the United States and Israel.
It's fascinating because in these recent years, there's also been this stuff happening in ArtSoc. Do you know about that stuff?
I'm not familiar with that. Forgive me.
So ArtSoc is this is a bit of a 180 shift then, because part of our goal here at 180 is to get a larger conversation started amongst younger people. And what we see so often is many people have very different perspectives. They're dealing with different things in their lives. So one thing that's happening, though, is in ArtSoc is a lot of Armenian people are losing loved ones left and right who are out in Armenia. And many of them came here in the recent years. I mean, even since 2014, I talked to one guy who came here, and he left because his family found out that he was going to be drafted in a war that, they were definitely going to lose. So people were fleeing to Glendale left and right. And in ArtSoc, though, many people were killed. There was no support. America wasn't even talking about it. So why do you think that the media hasn't touched much about the tragedies that are happening in ArtSoc? I mean, just for example, I was at a school, I teach in Glendale, and I was at an Armenian school, and there was a whole wall in their classroom, and these are 6-year-olds, and the wall was all of teenage boys, and young men who, it was their face, they had all been killed in this war, and there was a wall lined, and these kids, my students, were so sad. They were looking at the wall going, yeah, that's my cousin, and it's a small community, but why do you think that U.S. government and the media are not talking about what's happening in ArtSoc as well?
Look, I have dear friends who are Armenian Christian, and there's a beautiful Armenian community here in Glendale, and an exquisite church, just such a beautiful church in Glendale that I've been to and was recently sadly at a funeral there. It doesn't play into the narrative, does it? It doesn't play into the liberal narrative, because the liberal narrative is we should be taking care of that. Remember that there's the whole issues of what is going on in the Middle East. And it's not just Israel, Palestine, Jordanian, Egyptian, Syria, Lebanon. It's Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. And
this attack is timed to stop what the alliance that has been in discussions and close to closing, because of Bezrat Hashem, with God's help, between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Because the Saudis realize how dangerous Iran is. Yeah. And into that whole mix, to go to your Armenian issue, is you have Turkey, which is a world power. And Turkey wants to be the Ottoman Empire again, which controlled the world. So you've got all this stuff going on in Turkey as well that comes into that mix.
Yeah.
And to bring all of that to light, to bring that these people are dying, if people knew that there was, the killing, people don't even know that there was an Armenian genocide. Okay, people don't know that. The vast majority of Americans, you say there's an Armenian genocide, they'll say, who's an Armenian, what's an Armenian, where's Armenia, and who died? Right? They won't know.
Terrible.
That's true.
And they literally don't know. And these are the same people who say, oh, the Holocaust was exaggerated. And who say Israel's the bully. Because they don't know, and they're not looking at both a micro and macro image at the same time.
Yeah.
So Turkey's an extremely powerful nation on a lot of different levels. And remember, there's a history, because at one point in the world, the Ottoman Empire was the empire of the West. I mean, it's in the East, but it was the big empire. You can't, to be aware, you need to see all of those things.
Yeah.
And that doesn't play into the narrative that the liberal media wants to toss out. I mean, that's why it's thank God that there are people like the two of you.
Yeah, I mean, we just believe that, these perspectives need to be talked about and discussed, because I personally don't think we're as different as we think we are, I mean, we all care about humans and lives, and anyway, so that's why it's important that we keep the conversation going,
Absolutely.
Because that's key here is communication.
Now, something that I just barely learned about, because I saw this online, was the term called sleeper cell. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
Now, I don't know, well, I now do, but I don't think a lot of people like my age knows what that is. So I think we should talk about that a little bit. And I think, because I also heard that people are afraid of that happening, or sleeper cell.
So wasn't there a whole TV series about that?
Not sure.
I'm pretty sure there was a whole TV series for a couple of years about that whole concept. I mean, like in the last 5 years. So the idea is that you implant, often in America, we look at things in terms of history and planning, as in today, last week, next week, last month, next month, maybe next year, maybe last year. But to put in perspective, Sony Corporation has a 500-year business plan. Okay? Just to put it in perspective, all right? To quote a friend of mine who's a Ojibwe, who went to a sweat lodge as a boy, and he came to his grandfather, and he said, how do we lose the war with this kind of amazing medicine? And his grandfather said, the war's not over yet. Because when you look in terms of thousands of years, 100 years is nothing. As a Jewish history, I mean, our most recent holiday, other than the holiday regarding the Holocaust memorial, we celebrated the other night. It's called Simchat Torah. It's the renewal of the Torah. That's our really new holiday. That's from the Middle Ages. Okay? So we look at things a little bigger. America's a very young culture. Okay, it's a very, very young culture. And when you look at terms of, let's just look at Bible, because you're both familiar with that. We're looking at a 3,700-year culture of Judaism.
Yeah.
So you look at things a little differently when you're looking at a big perspective. That's how cultures in the Middle East and Asia look at the world. They don't look at the way Americans do. So when you're discussing Turkey, when you're discussing all these different things, you got to put it in a bigger perspective historically to understand the future as well. So what is a sleeper cell? A sleeper cell is the concept that I want to have people who are on my side who will come out and fight for me, for our cause, whatever our cause is. We're gonna have a 180 shift cause, and but we want to make sure that in 30 years, when we want to go to war, that we already have people infiltrated into the different places in society, in positions of power. And so, we're going to take, for our 180 shift little country, we're going to take you and your husband and child, and you're going to go into living in Chicago or Miami or Idaho or Los Angeles or wherever you want to live. We're going to take you and move you with your husband into another group somewhere. And you're going to have your friends who also know who you really are. And you're going to live your life nice and easily under the premise of you're now media hosts and media celebrities and your influencers and all this, so that when we decide to have our war, where we're going to go take over the world as 180 shift, you're already there. Now, and you're already placed in positions of power where you can make a difference. So a lot of the concept came apparently in the Soviet Union. They actually had cities, little towns, where people were learning to be American in the 50s. So they could come to America and be in a sleeper cell. And at a certain point, you get notification. The idea is that you would get notification that, okay, time to wake up and not be a sleeper anymore. So one of the concerns in all of this is we've had an open border.
Yeah.
Right? It's just open. And, we're letting in people from Mexico and Guatemala and Venezuela and wherever.
Africa too.
Wherever it may be, coming in through the southern border.
Yeah.
And a certain percentage of those are Arab terrorists who are in the country now, and they can do whatever they want, and they function in society, and then when needed, they can go, God forbid, do whatever. And that's what people are scared of.
Is that a reasonable concern?
I think so.
Well, okay, not for me, because I put my faith in God. So, I'm going to tell you a story, because rabbis like to tell stories, and I think it's a little lighter and a way of teaching.
Like stories.
And it's a true story. So in the early Soviet Union, the Bolsheviks had taken over, and they went to a very, very powerful rabbi, and they said, "We want you to tell all your thousands of followers to give up Judaism and support us, become secular Soviets, socialists, support the Bolsheviks." And this is all documented, accurate story. And we'll take care of you. We'll give you a nice house. And he says, "I'm not giving up on God. I'm not giving up on Judaism." So they put him in prison. And they torture him, and it goes on for a while. And at one point, a Bolshevik officer comes and says, "I'm done with this. Convert, tell your people to stop being Jews, or you're going to die." And he pulls out a gun, and he says, "You're going to make that decision right now, or I'm going to kill you." And the rabbi looks at him, and he says, "Your little toy does not scare me. Either you believe in one God in many worlds, or many gods in one world." In other words, either you believe there's one God that's manifest in all these different ways, in all these different things, or you believe that your car and your power and your money and your fame are all gods in this one world. It's really ultimately that decision.
Yeah.
And so this rabbi looks and says, either there's one God in many worlds, or there's many gods in one world. I know there's one God in many worlds. What do you believe? And it so strikes this Bolshevik officer, because all of a sudden he realizes that this is ridiculous, that there's only one God, that he puts away his gun and he helps the rabbi escape. The rabbi's son-in-law is the one who brought Chabad to this country. If you've heard of Chabad Judaism, the Chabad movement, the Hasidic movement, and becomes the head of Chabad. That's where it comes from. In terms, that's not where the theology of Chabad comes from, but that's how it gets to this country. Because this one man said, "I'm not scared of your little toy."
Yeah.
And I'm not, so when you say, are you scared of sleeper cells? No, because there's one God manifest in many different ways. And so I'm not scared about that. So I'm probably not the right guy to ask.
No, but that's a powerful message.
Yeah,
though.
it is.
We do need stronger faith.
Because we both believe in God, and that's something that we have faith that in the end God wins and He's good.
Yeah.
Which I will, I have a friend I want to share with you something. A dear friend, Pastor Rob McCoy. I don't know if you know Rob or not.
Yes.
Okay.
I've talked to him. I've told him about us.
Okay, so Rob's a dear friend. Rob likes to say I'm his second favorite long-haired rabbi. But we have this discussion. We've had this publicly, that the Messiah is going to come. You're going to say welcome back. I'm going to say welcome for the first time, or I'm going to accept him.
Yeah.
Because we need to all accept God, and God wants us to. So,
yeah.
So there's not fear, and that's why that video I showed you, which I don't know if you can put up at some point, that 20 of those Israeli soldiers, these Israeli soldiers singing with such joy and passion the words of Rabbi Nachman that mean, Kol Halam Kulo, all of the world is just a narrow bridge, but above all, most important, do not be afraid. Never be afraid.
Yeah.
Fear is
And-
really. I believe it's just from the devil, honestly. Like, what is it other than a cheap
Fears.
trick? Can you really.
Fear and faith, the answer to fear is not courage, the answer is faith. You cannot have fear and faith in the same place at the same time. The more of one, the less than the other. The more of the other, the less of the one. Faith is the antidote to fear. So when you say, am I concerned about those things? We do what we got to do, but no, I'm not scared.
Yeah.
Now, I want to know what your message would be to Gen Z, so people our age, young people in America.
First of all, support Israel in every way you can. It's the only democracy in the Middle East. It is the only free place in the Middle East. It is the most amazing place on the planet, and I choose to live in America, and I love America, and I love my soul will be split. I love Israel. The air is cleaner, or the air is different. It's more alive. The food is more alive. The colors are more vibrant, and the joy that is there is amazing. And that's number one. Number two is to step up and say, this is not okay. What Hamas has done is not okay. And here's the analogy that I've made and will make. If you have a dog, do you guys have a dog?
I have a dog.
Okay, you love your dog?
Oh, I love my dog.
Right? You love your puppy, right? Yeah. But if God forbid the dog became rabid and had rabies, you would do everything you could to heal the dog, right? Everything. But at a certain point, if the dog started killing children, you'd put the dog down.
You have to put the dog down.
And you'd cry about
That's
it.
right. Yeah.
There'd be no joy. That's the analogy. And what Hamas has done is they have stopped being humans and become rabid animals. It needs to be stopped. And the other place is we need to support Israel. And I can tell you a way to do that if we have time to do that.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. There's a hospital called B'nai Zion Medical Center. There are a number of them. This is one in Haifa. They actually have a huge bunker as a hospital so that no matter what, even a nuclear bomb, God forbid, the people in the hospital are safe. They are overwhelmed right now. They're in the north. And most of what they have right now they're overwhelmed with civilians.
I see.
And they need certain medical supplies. Specifically, they need to acquire 4 anesthetic devices that are $100,000 each. And we just did through our temple and through Twitter, we just raised $22,000 yesterday that went straight to them to help buy these things. One of the things that every Gen Z person can do, every one of you, is make a difference. Yeah. And that's important. And here's how. You can go to healthcareforisrael.org. Health, spelling out for F-O-R, healthcareforisrael.org. And you can make a donation. And you have 40,000 people who watch you. Okay. If 1 out of 4, if 10,000 people that listen to you, each gave just $10, that's a machine that will save hundreds of lives right now.
I mean, it's so small, but it makes such a big difference.
Right now.
Yeah.
Every Gen Z person can say, I'm not going to buy my coffee bean for 2 days. I'm going to take $10, I'm going to take $18, $20, whatever it is, and I'm going to send, and there's no questions about, is it going to for Israel, F-O-R, Israel.org. You can just start. That's something every Gen Z person can do. The other thing that you can do is think. Unfortunately, the Gen Z generation, and it's not just you, it's the generation before as well, has been instructed. In other words, instruction meaning put in information, as opposed to educated, which means to make you think. And it's what your common sense knows. If these people are killing children, it's not okay, and we can't support them, and they need to be stopped. Then when other people say, wait a minute, free Palestine, you call them out on it right then and there. And you say, that's just not true. How do you justify Hamas? It doesn't matter what has been done. It doesn't matter what the publicity says or anything else. Forget about anything else. You can't justify beheading babies. You can't. You cannot justify that. You cannot justify taking a woman, beating her and taking her out of the car, and this video you can see on my Twitter, and having 30 men with rifles stomp on her till she's dead. That is not justifiable. In any case, in any war, in anything, in any world. And so what needs to happen, because it's the Gen Z generation that can change the world, it is the young who have the energy and the strength to make a difference. But you make a difference starting with yourself and taking action. Whether it's giving $10, whether it's calling out people and saying, wait a minute, whoa, back off with this free Palestine. Do you know the real history, number one? And number two, how do you justify raping a woman next to her best friend who you just raped and killed, which is what they did in this dance party? You cannot justify that. And what can you do? You have the blessing, the privilege, and the obligation of stepping up and saying, I'm going to call it out. If nothing else, if I'm not going to give money, if I'm not going to give time, I at least can call it out and say, you're wrong. Do you really think it's okay to kill a baby and cut off their head? And that's what Gen Z can do. That's what every one of your listeners can do. If nothing else, call out this evil for what it is.
Yep.
So I'm sorry for getting passionate and getting.
It is something that we all need to be aware of, and this is not something that needs to be taken lightly. Yeah, it's very true, and I hope that every single person on or who's listening will actually listen to the advice that you've given, because this is something very important, and it's unjustifiable of what they're doing. It's absolutely
And
terrible.
I will tell you what's going to happen in a week or 2 weeks.
I actually was going to ask, what are we looking at?
Here's what you're going to see happening. It's already starting. They've cut off the electricity, the water, and the power to Gaza. Okay? And what you're going to see within the next week to 2 weeks, odds are from the mainstream media, are these horrific images of Palestinian in Gaza children who are starving or who have no water. And they're going to say, look how evil Israel is. And just put down your weapons, Israel, and let them be. And you're going to see that really quickly. And people will forget the image of children being beheaded by these animals. They will forget what we've just seen over the last 3 days. People are already starting to. And that's the other thing that Gen Z can do, which is to remind people, wait a minute. Just wait. Don't forget why this is happening. They chose to do this. They chose to act like Amalek. They chose specifically to go after Israeli civilians, and they're holding them hostage. And it's going to get ugly. But think about the fact that the Israelis give notice before they bomb a building. They literally give notice. We're going to bomb this building because we know that there's rockets or else arms there so that people can get out. Israel is a defense nation, and what Gen Z young people can do is choose to call out when people are lying, when they're buying into the mainstream media publicity lies, because you're going to see it in the next week to 2 weeks. They're using children as shields. And they don't need, as opposed to, that's what they've done. Have you ever seen, there's an image that was a very, very famous image years ago of Palestinians throwing rocks at Israeli soldiers. Okay? And so, see, they're throwing rocks while the Israelis have these guns. But if you actually saw, and one person took a picture, and that became a very, very famous picture to the poor Palestinians. But someone took a picture of the whole thing. It was all set. Because you have hundreds of reporters right here lined up taking pictures. It was all a set photo shoot. Okay? It wasn't actual combat. It was a set photo shoot. And someone took a picture of that one image. But you didn't see that in the media, did you? Unless you knew where you were looking. And there are places you can look for things, timesofisrael.com, mideasttruth.com. There are a number of different places, but it's so important to realize that it's not, I think we're going to be seeing very soon, as Israel starts taking more and more action, oh, look at big bad Israel. And people are going to block out of their minds a woman being killed and her head dragging on the car as they put the car in drive, and you see her head bouncing. And she's dead, and she's bouncing. That's going to go, people block that out of their minds and say, oh, the bad Israelis. And we can't block out those horrors. And we shouldn't.
Wow.
We should never forget.
That's something that I think that we're so quick, I think, in America to do is just forget what happened like a few days ago, a week ago, 2 weeks ago. And that's something that we can't let happen in this case. But, I mean, do you have any final words to say, or how can people reach you in the future and follow you?
They can go to Twitter, Rabbi_Barclay, RABBI _BARCLAY. You can find me on Twitter, and there are a lot of articles that I'll write. I do a lot of writing. So that's one way they can easily reach me and find me. I think the best words are that prayer that we say of Oseh Shalom, that may the one who ordains peace in the universe bring peace upon us and upon our families and our communities, and peace upon this country and peace upon Israel, and for our children's sake, peace in all the world. And that we never lose our souls. We do what we have to do, but never rejoice in it. All which and a blessing to do that. And I thank you guys for being so kind to me and letting me say these things to you. Really.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing, and you were very helpful and very informative. So, yeah, thank you so much for being here today.
And thank you so much, because I know that's very tough and very a hard subject to talk about, but thank you so much.
We got to do it. We got to do it. So thank you for doing that, and hopefully you'll inspire a lot of others.
Did we get something up here?
Can we see this? All right, let me put this in perspective, because I think it's a great way, actually.
Okay.
So, if you go watch Arab soldiers, okay, they're screaming, "Death to America, death to Israel," right? All this horrific. Okay. So you're going to see a clip of Israeli soldiers, and they're going to be chanting the words of Rabbi Nachman, who was a 19th century rabbi, a great mystic, and he says, all of the world is just a narrow bridge, and most important, but above all, never be afraid. So these are men who are about to face death, potentially, and who are about to, even worse, have to kill. And it's an amazing, inspiring, it's the whole, as opposed to death to America, death to Israel, let's kill, let's destroy. They're praising God.
Yeah. Wow.
And to me, that's so inspiring of hope and faith. They're not worshiping death.
No.
See, that's the thing. Judaism does not worship death. We worship life.
Yes.
So if you can see that video, that would be fabulous. I don't know if we can put it up again. I lost it.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Whatever technical
it?
things we have on here.
Oh, well, I've got a monitor with an old guy with a white beard. There we go.
There you go. Let's see.
There's no
I'm
sound.
not sure if there's audio to it,
But
that's
we're
the
just
video.
not getting the audio, but they probably are.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I see very happy.
They're not happy, but they're passionate.
They're not happy.
Well, no, they're not happy. They got to go, but they're passionate. They're joyous in
Yeah,
terms of they
look
have faith for
joyous.
God.
Yeah.
They know
Praising
your little
God.
your little toy doesn't scare me.
Praising God makes
Yeah.
a difference too, you know. When you need,
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know when they're going to take it off.
yeah.
It's inspiring in hope and faith. How these and it's all the difference in the world. Our soldiers praise God and praise. Made a $10 donation. This show will have bought a machine that will save hundreds of lives immediately.
That's amazing. Yeah, so
Yeah.
please go to that website. And can you say that website again?
It's healthcareforisrael.org. There's a link on my Twitter feed. I pinned it at the top. And you can make... This show could be responsible for directly saving hundreds of civilians' lives.
Yeah. We're definitely going to talk more about that then.
Yep.
Essentially.
We definitely are. Well, thank you so much. I think
Yeah,
that's a
thank
good
you.
way to end it, I think.
Any
Thank you,
closing
guys.
statements, Ellie?